After sending his family out of town, architect Evan is left home alone for the weekend to finish an urgent project. Two drenched, cute girls in their 20s knock on his door and tell him they are lost. Evan couldn't even think how he would end up helping these innocent, at first glance, creatures. Evan and Karen, a joyful couple living in California with their two children. During breakfast, Karen's assistant, Luis, arrives with exhibition catalogs, sharing a light moment with the family. Evan checks with the children about their preparations for a beach weekend with Karen. Karen points out the crucial components of her sculpture to Luis, noting it's still drying, and he agrees to transport it to the gallery once ready. As Karen and the kids gear up, she informs Evan that his physical therapist, Vivian, will visit the next day. The children express their wish for Evan to join the beach trip, but he has to stay back for work. On a stormy night, Evan is engrossed in his work, designing 3D models while listening to music. He receives a call from Karen expressing their longing for him. Later, a knock at the door interrupts Evan's work. Opening the door, he meets two girls, Belle and Genesis, searching for an address they mispronounced to their cab driver, leading them to Evan's doorstep instead. Evan, though hesitant, lets them in to use his computer to find their way. He fetches towels for them and upon returning, discovers them in a different part of the house. Genesis requests the correct address, explaining their mix-up with the street name to the driver, which brought them to Evan's location instead. Evan reaches out to a rideshare service and secures a ride for the girls in 45 minutes. They briefly discuss and then request to dry their clothes to avoid arriving at the party drenched. Evan consents and provides them with some robes. He also takes Genesis's phone to place it in rice, hoping to dry it out. As he makes tea for them in the kitchen and receives their wet clothes, Evan puts the garments in the dryer. Soon, he notices the sound of music and laughter coming from where his vintage turntable is. Entering the room, he finds the girls dancing and they strike up a conversation about his extensive vinyl collection. Evan shares that he was a DJ during his 20s, surprising them with this piece of his past. Their curiosity about his age leads to a revelation that makes them comment on how young he looks. Evan explains that he married young and mentions his family's weekend trip that he missed due to work obligations. The girls sympathize with him, offering a hug, but things turn awkward when Genesis begins to make unwelcome advances, commenting on his physique. The atmosphere shifts slightly when Belle notices a photograph of his wife, Karen, complimenting Evan on his fortune. Evan warmly talks about Karen and her artistic talent, impressing Belle with the fact that all the artwork in the house is Karen's creation. Genesis, revealing a brief study in art history, wonders why Karen's sculptures aren't featured in major museums, prompting Evan to show them Karen's exhibition catalog for her upcoming show in LA. The girls express admiration for Karen's work and Evan's support for her, curiously probing into their romantic life, which makes Evan feel uneasy. He admits feeling out of his depth with their frank discussions about intimacy, leading the girls to tease him about sounding old. Shifting his position and checking on the rideshare status, Evan fields a question from Genesis about the length of his marriage to Karen. The girls challenge his view on monogamy and human nature, sparking a moment of reflection for Evan. Belle shares her perspective, suggesting that to prevent infidelity, she'd consider threesomes in her future marriage. Learning they are flight attendants, the girls engage in playful role-playing, which Evan sidesteps by inquiring about their work base. The conversation shifts to travel and experiences, but soon veers back to topics of intimacy, with Evan anxiously checking the rideshare update again. When Genesis inquires about the restroom, Evan takes the opportunity to change the music, selecting a record Belle picks. Belle believes their meeting was fated and convinces Evan to dance with her. Amid their dance, she flirts and attempts to kiss him, but the arrival of their rideshare interrupts. Belle leaves to fetch Genesis, and Evan prepares their clothes. Noticing their delay, Evan seeks them out and finds them in the bathroom, laughing and without clothes, presenting themselves as his unexpected surprise. Despite initially protesting and urging them to dress for their waiting ride, Evan is drawn into their advances, leading to a moment of weakness. The rideshare driver departs after failing to get a response, and Evan finds himself in a compromising situation with the girls, first in the bathtub and then moving to his bedroom, where they eventually fall asleep together. Awakening to find himself alone, Evan quickly responds to a text from his wife, puts on his wedding band, and dresses. Genesis is making pancakes and offers some to him. Frustrated by their disregard for his situation, Evan sternly offers to drive them wherever they need to go. The girl's laughter only fuels his frustration, and as Evan grapples with this predicament, his wife's call catches him off guard. He steps outside to answer, fabricating a story about overindulging in marijuana and falling asleep early, to which Karen teasingly labels him a lightweight. However, Karen picks up on his distraction, leading to a swift end to their conversation. Confronted with the challenge of escorting the girls out, Evan re-enters the house, visibly upset and demanding they get ready to leave. Upon entering, he is shocked to find them adding paint to Karen's sculpture. They claim to have been inspired by the previous night, leading Evan to threaten calling the police. However, Genesis warns him against it, revealing they are minors, with Belle claiming she is only 15. Belle mentions she has evidence, complicating Evan's decision to involve the police. In a desperate attempt to resolve the situation, he inquires about any monetary compensation they might want. The girls are taken aback, suggesting Evan is treating them unfairly. Belle reacts strongly, slapping Evan and asserting she's not to be mistreated. Suddenly, the doorbell interrupts the tense moment. Evan instructs them to stay put while he goes to answer the door, finding Vivian, his physical therapist, waiting. As Vivian starts to converse, Evan quickly mentions his improved health, suggesting he no longer requires her services. Despite this, Vivian keeps talking until Genesis intervenes, mistakenly telling Vivian that Evan isn't interested in her massage services. Evan urges Genesis to return inside, but Vivian becomes visibly upset, fearing the worst about her relationship with Evan's family. Returning inside, Evan discovers the girls tampering with his turntable. They leave the premises, and Evan drives them to a different neighborhood. Once home, Evan starts tidying up immediately. He cleans the kitchen and bathroom and attempts to restore his wife's sculpture to its original state. He then resumes work on his project. A sound of glass shattering elsewhere in the house startles him. Entering the living room, he discovers a family photograph shattered on the floor. As he bends down to pick it up, Genesis strikes him from behind with one of his wife's sculptures. Evan awakens, finding himself bound to Genesis's bed. She's meticulously applying makeup and humming to herself. He pleads with her to release him, emphasizing that he's a good person who has made a mistake. Out of nowhere, Belle enters the room, dressed in Evan's daughter's clothing down to the underwear. Evan expresses concern, telling Belle that her actions are unhealthy, but Belle persists in her behavior. In her actions, Evan sees glimpses of Belle's troubled past, revealing deep-seated daddy issues and a tumultuous childhood. Meanwhile, Genesis, observing the scene, writes the words "It was not a dream" on the mirror, perhaps indicating a realization or acknowledgement of the surreal situation unfolding before her. Belle's behavior escalates as she starts to physically assault Evan, projecting her past trauma onto him, associating him with the pain inflicted by her father during her childhood. Suddenly, his phone starts ringing, prompting both to reach for it. Upon seeing Karen's name flash across the screen with a FaceTime call for Evan, they prepare to answer, provocatively unzipping his pants and threatening to take the call. Belle, eager to be intimate with him, leaps onto him while Genesis captures the moment on his phone before exiting the room. Evan eventually frees himself from his bindings, shoving Belle to the floor, rushing to confront Genesis. Catching her off guard while she enjoys a cake, he seizes her by the throat. However, she retaliates, stabbing his shoulder with her fork and twisting it, subduing Evan. Overwhelmed by pain, Evan faints, giving them the chance to restrain him once more. They engage in a mock game, with Genesis acting as the game show host and Belle as the participant, while Evan is forced into the role of another contestant. Faced with a question he can't answer, Evan nearly faces punishment but is spared by the sound of the doorbell. Lewis arrives to collect a sculpture, and the girls hastily conceal Evan so he remains unseen. Belle swiftly moves him to a different area, while Genesis greets Lewis at the door, fabricating a story that Evan is her uncle and they are shooting a music video. Upon entering to retrieve the sculpture, Lewis senses something amiss. The girls falsely claim innocence, blaming vandalism on a break-in as they attempt to shield the sculpture from view. When the artwork's condition is revealed, showcasing how it has been vandalized, they concoct a tale of an intruder. Skeptical of their explanation, Lewis contemplates contacting the authorities. When Genesis attempts to flirt with him, her efforts fail to sway him. He's not deceived by their act. He rushes to Evan's side, revealing him and starts to free him from the ties, but opts to confront the girls upon hearing them damaging the sculpture. Racing to the scene, Lewis confronts them, only to suffer an asthma attack amid the chaos. Desperately needing his inhaler, he discovers it's missing, taken by the girls who are now taunting him by throwing it back and forth, ignoring his plight. Amid the turmoil, Lewis stumbles, hitting his head against the sculpture's base, causing severe injury. The girls mock the situation, disregarding Evan's pleas to summon medical help for Lewis. Evan accuses them of causing Lewis's death, but Genesis coldly shifts the blame to Lewis's wife and her terrible sculpture. They then drag Evan back inside, and later, in a macabre twist, they drape Lewis's body with paper, crafting a mock sculpture from his form. While Evan attempts to reach his firearm, Genesis sends a menacing message from Evan's phone to Lewis, and they hide the body in Lewis's van. The girls return to persist with their game show facade involving Evan. Genesis labels his family as unfortunate sufferers of his immoral actions, and Belle disdainfully spits on a family picture, accusing him of betraying them by his involvement with both girls. Evan, realizing the gravity of his situation, starts begging for his life, insisting the girls initiated everything by provoking him, yet he takes no responsibility for his actions. Genesis grimly informs him of his impending execution at dawn, advising him not to waste his final hours in despair. Subsequently, the girls prepare a grave for him in the backyard before returning indoors. Right when Evan manages to grab his tablet to contact Karen, Genesis snatches it from him. Following this, they switch into different outfits from his wardrobe. They proceed to vandalize most of Karen's sculptures and design projects. Additionally, they give Evan an embarrassing bowl haircut, mock him, and wreak havoc on his residence and the remainder of Karen's artistic creations. Eventually, they discover the firearm, and Belle releases him from his bindings. Evan inquires about Belle's desires once more, and Genesis proposes a game of hide and seek, offering him 30 seconds to conceal himself within the home. She promises they will depart if they fail to locate him by daybreak. Evan dashes to the kitchen, grabbing a knife as the countdown begins. Believing the coast is clear, he flees the house, but Genesis catches up, taunting him that his screams are futile since no one is around to hear. As dawn breaks, the girls drag Evan to the prepared grave, tossing him in but ensuring his head remains above the surface. They bury him up to his neck, ignoring his pleas for mercy. Evan vows to change his ways, prompting Genesis to remove his gag. She then feigns a threatening gesture with the sculpture, ultimately letting it fall beside him, not on him. This terrifies Evan into tears while they mock him, revealing it was all a twisted game. They admit to having played similar games with other men, asserting they are all predictably the same. Before departing, they reveal they are not minors and take a final action against Evan by posting a video of him and Belle on Facebook. They leave the phone where Evan can see it, then exit the premises. When his family returns the following day, they are met with the chaotic aftermath left by the girls. The end. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like our channel and subscribe if you enjoy content like this. Also, let us know what movie you would love us to recap for you.